The screen fades in from black. The sound of rushing wind. An engine's deep roar. And then, silence. Imagine this, the narrator's voice begins, low and gripping. You're flying 30,000 feet above the earth. The cabin hums with quiet chatter, the seatbelt sign is off, and people are flipping through magazines, sipping sodas, or staring out the window into endless clouds. Nothing seems unusual, until it does. The shot cuts to a little girl sitting by the window in row 12. Her name, Emily Carter. She's only 12 years old. Her hair is tied back in a messy ponytail, her shoes barely reach the floor, and she's holding a worn notebook filled with hand-drawn airplanes. Her dream, since she was old enough to speak, was to become a pilot like her late father. But no one on board, not even Emily herself, could imagine that today would test her dream in the most terrifying way. At first, it began as a normal flight from Denver to Miami. 2 seasoned pilots at the controls, a calm flight path, no storms on the radar. Emily sat with her mother, drawing aircraft cockpits and jotting down buttons she'd memorized from watching documentaries. The hum of the engines was comforting, steady, like a lullaby. Then, without warning, turbulence struck. The cabin shook violently, cups tumbled off trays, and passengers gasped as the lights flickered. Flight attendants steadied themselves against seats. But turbulence wasn't the worst of it. Up in the cockpit, both pilots, Captain Reynolds and First Officer Harris, struggled to maintain control. A strange smell filled the air. Their hands trembled. Within seconds, the color drained from their faces. They slumped forward, unconscious, their oxygen masks swaying uselessly above them. The aircraft, still at 30,000 feet, was now without pilots. The intercom buzzed. A panicked flight attendant's voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a doctor on board, please come forward immediately." Murmurs swept through the passengers. People exchanged worried looks. Nobody knew yet what was truly happening in the cockpit. But Emily did. Her sharp eyes noticed how the plane began to drift. It was subtle, the tilt of the horizon, the way her stomach felt lighter. She had studied enough aviation manuals to know something was wrong. And when a flight attendant whispered frantically into the phone, her expression pale as paper, Emily's heart began to race. She grabbed her mother's hand. "Mom," she whispered, "the pilots, something happened to them." Her mother shook her head, trying to calm her. "Sweetheart, don't say things like that." But Emily was certain. And moments later, her fear was confirmed. A flight attendant appeared, trembling, and made the announcement nobody expected. "Both pilots are unconscious. We're trying to reach ground control. Please stay calm." The cabin erupted. Gasps, prayers, cries. Panic spread like wildfire. Emily stood up, her small frame almost invisible in the chaos. She whispered to herself, "I know what to do." At first, the flight attendants didn't notice her. They were busy trying to contact ATC through the radio, voices shaking as they failed to interpret the sea of dials and switches. But Emily marched forward, her heart pounding. "Let me in the cockpit," she said. The attendants blinked in disbelief. "Sweetheart, you can't, this is serious." "I know it's serious," Emily cried, her voice cracking with emotion. "My dad was a pilot. I've studied this my whole life. Please, just give me a chance." Something in her eyes, something raw, desperate, and unshaken, made them hesitate. Finally, one attendant opened the door. Inside, the cockpit lights glowed dimly, alarms beeping. The 2 pilots slumped motionless in their seats. The control yoke wobbled under the autopilot strain. Emily stepped inside. For a moment, she froze. This was it. This was the dream she'd written about in her notebooks, drawn over and over again. But now it wasn't a dream, it was life or death. She sat down in the captain's seat. Her feet barely touched the pedals. Her hands shook as they hovered over the controls. The radio crackled. "Flight 782, this is Miami Center, do you copy?" "Repeat, this is Miami Center, respond." Emily reached for the microphone. Her voice trembled but didn't break. This is passenger Emily Carter. The pilots, they're unconscious. I'm at the controls." Silence. Then a voice, calm but urgent. "Emily, did you say you're 12 years old?" "Yes. But I know how to fly. I just need your help." A pause. Then, "All right, Emily, we're with you. You're not alone. Can you see the autopilot panel in front of you?" Her eyes darted across the glowing buttons. "Yes. Good. Keep your hands steady." The plane is holding altitude for now. Emily, you're incredibly brave. We're going to guide you every step of the way. Her mother stood just outside the cockpit door, tears streaming down her face. Baby, you can do this. And so, the impossible began. For the next 20 minutes, Emily held the yoke steady, her small arms burning with effort. She listened to air traffic controllers who patiently explained which switches to flip, which numbers to check, and how to gradually adjust the heading. But flying at 30,000 feet was one thing. Landing, that was another. Emily, the controller said, you're going to have to land the aircraft. Do you understand? Her throat tightened. Land. She'd practiced on a simulator game. She'd drawn every button she could remember. But this was real, hundreds of lives behind her, depending on her hands. She closed her eyes. She pictured her father, who used to take her to the airport fence to watch planes take off. He'd always say, Emily, flying is just trust. Trust the plane. Trust yourself. She opened her eyes and whispered, I can do this. The descent began. The engines roared louder, the nose tilted down. Passengers gripped armrests and prayed aloud. Through the windows, the lights of Miami flickered like scattered stars. The controller's voice was steady. Emily, lower the landing gear. Look for the lever, it's on your right. She reached, pulled it. A satisfying clunk echoed as the gear locked into place. Good. Now ease back, just a little. Keep your nose steady. Don't fight the plane, guide it. Her palms were slick with sweat. Every second felt like forever. The runway stretched ahead, glowing in the darkness. Almost there, Emily. Flare the nose, just gently. The plane screamed toward the ground. The wheels hit the tarmac. A violent jolt rattled every bone in her body. Sparks flew as the tires fought for grip. For a moment, she thought she'd failed. But then, silence. The plane slowed. The nose dipped. And finally, it stopped. For a second, nobody breathed. Then, the cabin erupted in thunderous applause, cheers, sobs of relief. Passengers cried out Emily's name. Mothers hugged their children. Flight attendants collapsed into seats, overwhelmed with gratitude. Emily sat frozen in the captain's chair, staring at the stopped runway lights ahead of her. Her chest rose and fell. And then the tears came, hot, unstoppable. Her mother rushed in, wrapping her arms around her trembling daughter. You did it, baby. You saved us. Emergency crews swarmed the runway. Paramedics rushed to the cockpit to treat the unconscious pilots. Reporters gathered. The world would soon know what had happened at 30,000 feet. But in that moment, none of it mattered to Emily. She was just a little girl, clutching her mother, knowing she had faced the impossible, and won. Days later, when the story broke, headlines around the world called her, the miracle girl pilot. Aviation experts shook their heads in disbelief. How could a 12-year-old land a commercial airliner? But those who were on board knew the truth. It wasn't just skill. It was courage. And maybe, just maybe, it was the spirit of her father flying beside her. So if you're watching this right now, let Emily's story remind you. Courage doesn't come from size, age, or strength. It comes from the heart. And sometimes, heroes really are found in the most unexpected places. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that bravery can come from anyone, anywhere, even a 12-year-old girl at 30,000 feet.